Welcome to Books and Beyond with That Guy Jay. I am your host, That Guy Jay. Real quick, let's start with the watch of the day. Today's watch of the day is the Casio A168. This is one of Casio's classic retro designs. I have this in a negative display, which I think looks really cool, but it is a little bit harder to see the time. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but in the direct light, it's a little tricky, but I love this watch. I think this is a great throwback to the 80s design. And as always, if you could take a minute to like, share, subscribe, comment, hit any of the buttons, it goes a long way. I thank you guys so much for the support. But let's just dive into the episode. This week is going to be another solo podcast. I have multiple guest recordings coming up this week. So next week and the following weeks, we'll be back to guest episodes. But today, it's just me again. Last week, we talked about why I started the podcast and how I think we're doing, roughly 6 or 7 months into it. And I kind of wanted to circle back to the reason I started this, and that was to help me reconnect with passions, whether new or old. Like I had said last week, since my injury, I felt like I lost a lot of my passion. One thing that content creation and this podcast in particular have brought me back to is photography. Thanks to the help of the amazing Book Talk community, I was able to purchase this new camera for my birthday back in April. This is a Fujifilm XS20. This is considered a hybrid camera. It's good at both photo and video. It's not specialized in really anything, but I think photography is a great way to talk about what I wanted to talk about today, and that is the importance of sticking with things. Yesterday, I made a post on my TikTok account. I saw a trend amongst photographers where they were putting pictures of all of the cameras they've owned throughout their life. So I did that. I haven't recently really taken an opportunity to think back at the different cameras I've had. But realistically, my photography journey started in 1998. I was a freshman in high school. I was 14 years old. It was not common for freshmen to get into the photography class that the high school had, but somehow I got lucky and got into it. It was a fantastic class. We used Pentax K1000 film cameras. They were all manual. There was nothing automatic about them. We developed our own film. We were lucky enough to have a Lightroom where we could develop our own black and white pictures. I learned a ton in that class, and I had an absolutely great time in that class. At one point in high school, I worked for the equivalent of a Blockbuster. I am from a small town, so we didn't have Blockbuster, but we had a video rental store on one half of the store, and the other half of it was a camera store. And this would have been back when people still got film developed regularly. And because I worked there, I got a discount on camera. So I believe in my junior year of high school, I bought a Canon EOS Rebel 2000, which was a film camera. It was an SLR. Because I missed photography, I hadn't done really anything with it since that class freshman year. And I got that camera, and I probably didn't use it enough, but I did run some rolls of film through it over the years and had a good time with it. But then again, I got more into photography my senior year of high school because I got into a photography class yet again. We had a photography 2 class available, which was a little bit more advanced. Not necessarily in the cameras we used or the development of films, but just in the assignments and things we were supposed to take pictures of for assignments. It was a little bit more creative and a little bit more artsy and less about the mechanics of how to develop your film and how the camera works and things like that. And again, I had a fantastic time in this class. But this is where I kind of drifted away from it, and that's kind of what I wanted to touch on today is I think the importance of sticking with hobbies. Because now that I'm getting back into it, I'm realizing I could be an expert in photography if I had stuck with it throughout all of these years. I've bounced back in and out of it, and that was partially me, partially circumstances. But in general, I think we really should make an effort to stick with the things that we're passionate about. It's really easy to get caught up in life and for life to be too busy and to move away from things. But I think it's important to try and make an effort to keep doing the things you love because the cumulative experience over years is huge. And I look at how much more I could have progressed as a photographer if I had stuck with it the whole time. But I also am trying to approach this with the attitude of it's never too late. I'm 41 years old and I'm just getting back into it, but that's okay too. I think there's two sides to this conversation that I wanted to have, and that is the importance of sticking with things and the importance of being willing to go back and be, I guess I'm not quite a beginner, not quite intermediate with my photography. But at my age, a lot of people my age would be experts because they would have been doing this for so long. And I don't necessarily have regret about that. Life happens the way it does, and I try not to regret things. But I think it's just something it's a good thing to keep in your head is try and make time for the things you're passionate about. Even if you take breaks, try and stay connected to these things and try and try and track your progress in some way. I think with photography, it's actually really easy to do so. Something that I plan to do with photography this time that I didn't do previous times is I plan to print more of my pictures, and I've done some of that with like an Instax type printer where you can get Polaroid quality pictures. But I also plan to get actual prints made of some of my photos. And I think that that's a great way to see your progress with something like photography is you can make a photo album and you can look back on where you were and where you are. And then I think it's also important to look at professionals for inspiration to see where you would like to end up, how you'd like to develop your style. And this may not be as easy with every hobby or passion, but I think there usually is some type of way that you can keep track of your progress. And again, even if it's not every day, I do think it's really important to stick with these things you love. Another example I have of this is the Spanish language. I have been trying to learn Spanish on and off for the better part of 20 years, it feels like, and I'm still very much a beginner. My comprehension is fairly decent, but my speaking is not great. I speak very much like a toddler in terms of my grammar. I can usually get my message across to a point where people would understand me, but it's by no means fluent or even conversational. It's very basic. And that's another great example of something that I just didn't stick with. And again, I can make excuses and say that it was life, and life does get busy, but I also did have free time. I also did have free time where I could have been working on this throughout all the years. And even if I just worked a little bit every week, even a couple days a week, an hour a week, that would have added up to so much over the last 20 years versus what I've done is I've gotten really into it for a couple months at a time, and then I'll fall out of it for 6 months, and then I'll get really back into it, and then fall out of it again. And it's kind of like I'm just relearning the same things over and over. I'm not really giving myself an opportunity to progress. And Spanish is something that I would like to start working on more seriously again as well. I have time where I could be doing that. Just take a little bit of time away from my reading. If I did 30 minutes a day, I think it would make a huge difference over the course of a year. But I think it's important to have goals like this and to have hobbies that you want to progress in. Like I talked about in a previous episode where I said that hustle culture was kind of killing hobbies because everyone is trying to monetize every single thing they do, which I still believe and I still think is valid. But I think it's important to have these hobbies that aren't monetized, that are just for you, and they're things you do just simply because you love them. And it can literally be anything. Reading can very much be the same thing. And I think, again, I think there are ways to keep track of how you're progressing within the hobby. I look at content creation, book talk in particular, where I look back at my first videos that I made talking about books, where I really had nothing to say. And I still don't think that I'm the greatest book reviewer ever. I have a couple of mutuals on book talk that are absolutely phenomenal. And when I watch the reviews, I'm like, good Lord, I could never convey what they just did. But I still enjoy the process. And I think it's a great way to share what I'm reading. And it's a great way to make a solo hobby more interactive. And I think it's important to have those things. And I think hobbies naturally lead to community, and community is something that we're all seeking, I believe. And I talked about this last week where we're more connected with technology than ever, but I think more people are feeling lonely than ever before. So yeah, I guess that was the main point of what I wanted to talk about today is just the importance of sticking with things. Everybody's life gets busy, and there's obviously going to be times where it's really hard to prioritize your hobbies. But I think it is important to try and at least make a little bit of time every week or every month, depending on what your hobby is. But just try and carve out a little bit of time, stick with it for the long run. And I think you'll be amazed at the results you see over the years. Progress might feel slow week to week or day to day. But if you look at how far you can come in a year, 5 years, or when I think about how far I could have come with photography or Spanish over the last 20 years if I had stuck with it consistently, even in smaller doses, it's unbelievable. But again, circling back to it's never too late. I'm 41 and I just got back into photography after probably 6, 7 year break, maybe longer actually. When I got hurt, I stopped shooting, and then eventually I had to sell my last camera, which was the Canon 70D, and that was a little bit heartbreaking. Love that camera. But I'm loving this journey of getting back into photography now. It's gotten me out of the house more. It's given me new goals to set. It's a it's tapped into this creativity within myself that I wasn't fulfilling and that I didn't really know that I was ignoring. But this is also a great time for me to geek out a little bit about this camera. I love talking about camera gear. I love talking about any gear. I have EDC gear, flashlights, knives, fountain pens, any hobby I've gotten into. I've always also really enjoyed the gear that goes along with it. Even with this podcast, I loved learning about different microphones and lighting setups. And eventually, I'm going to be using this camera to film instead of my iPhone. But I am blown away by Fujifilm. I was never a Fujifilm shooter. I spent years being convinced that if I ever went back to photography, I was going to get a Sony. Sony has the best autofocus in the game. They have some of the best tech in the game. When it came time to pull the trigger and get a camera of my own, I just couldn't do it with Sony for some reason. I've seen too many reviews, and in my hand, I kind of felt the same way that others have about it, where it feels more like a gadget than a camera. It's not necessarily inspiring. It doesn't really make you want to get up and go out and shoot. I love this camera because it is a mix of the film photography with all the buttons and dials, whereas the Sony is a lot of touchscreen and a lot of menus and things like that. But this camera allows you to do so much without ever having to touch the touchscreen. You can do just about everything through the buttons and dials, which is amazing. I'm also blown away with the technology advancements that have happened since I got rid of my 70D. I believe the 70D came out in 2013 or 14, and this came out in late 2023. This is a mirrorless camera. I was only used to DSLRs. This is way smaller, way lighter. And Fujifilm is not known for having the best autofocus system. That's actually the one complaint some people have. But I am amazed with the autofocus on this versus a DSLR like the 70D. This has so many focus points. It has way better tracking. It can it can detect different subject matters. You can have it set for birds, you can have it set for wildlife, you can have it set for people where it'll automatically detect a face and or even an eye. You can pick specifically for it to focus on the left or right eye. There's so much that this camera can do that I never would have dreamed of with my 70D. It is absolutely amazing. I'm so grateful again to the Book Talk community that I even have this. I have just barely scratched the surface of what it's capable of. And like I said earlier, it's a hybrid camera, so it's also good at videography. As of now, I just have it in some basic vlog mode that I use to film, but it has much more capability than that. It can shoot in full 4K. It can shoot in what's called open gate, which uses the entire sensor so that you can essentially shoot a vertical video and a horizontal video at the same time. And it can do open gate at 6.2K, which is insane quality for this price point. I really think that Fujifilm is something special. It is really, really nice in the hand. Like I said, the controls are amazing. The grip is amazing. It also has a bunch of film simulations so that you can shoot in JPEG. You don't have to shoot RAW, which for those who don't know, with RAW photos, you get way more information, but they're very flat and dull and they absolutely need to be edited. You need to do post-processing on them for them to look to their full potential. With this, you can put different simulations on it and you can make it look like it's a film camera. You can shoot in black and white. You can fine tune a simulation yourself. There are 4 custom simulations where you can literally make your own, which I've only dabbled with. I'm still figuring all that out, but I'm currently working on trying to make my perfect simulation for street photography because that's what I enjoy. And I am just absolutely blown away with this, and I'm so glad that I got back to photography. I have missed it for years. I didn't realize how much I missed it until the last year or so, and then even since I got the camera in my hand again, it's become super evident how much I was missing this creative outlet. So if you are like me and you veered away from one of your hobbies or passions, regardless of your age, regardless of the time you have for the hobby, I absolutely recommend that you get back to it, even if it's super part time, even if it's only, like I said, once a month. You will not regret carving out a little bit of time for something that brings you this much joy. Life is incredibly hard. The world is so crazy and unpredictable right now. And I know a lot of us are struggling with mental health. And I know that there is a constant pressure on most people, but make some time to do something that you enjoy. It really makes a huge difference. Like I discussed last week, I've always been a super socially anxious person. And I appreciate a hobby like this because it's gotten me out of the house more. I went to a pride festival last week and had a fantastic time interacting with people. Being able to put myself behind the camera made me way more outgoing than I would normally be, to take pictures of people, to ask to take pictures of people, just to quickly say hello to people in passing, things like that. And again, I'm talking a lot about photography because that's my thing. Whatever your thing is, try and find some way to integrate it into your life when you have time. The reality is, I think that we all have a little bit more time than we like to admit because we all get stuck doom scrolling on TikTok. And I am also super guilty of this, but I'm trying to do better about that at night and do things that are a little bit more productive. I do enjoy watching YouTube videos about photography gear because, like I said, I'm a gear nerd. I'm just a nerd in general. I think that's become pretty clear. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. That's kind of what I wanted to cover for this week. The main point of this podcast was to reconnect with my passions, and I've been able to do so recently. And I really hope that you consider doing the same if you've gotten away from anything that you are passionate about. And if you're doing something and you feel like you're not progressing, stick with it because the cumulative effect will be great. Just keep doing it, keep having fun with it. Don't take your hobbies too seriously. And like I said, I have some exciting guests coming up in the next few weeks. I can't wait to share those with you. And one more time, if you haven't subscribed already, if you enjoyed the content at all, please consider subscribing. But that's it for this week. Thank you so much again for taking a little bit of time out of your week to watch Books and Beyond with that guy Jay. And I will see you again next week.